The night smelled of roses and smoke. Chandeliers glittered overhead, casting golden light across a hall that should have hosted a royal ball, not what it truly was, a marketplace of flesh. Velvet curtains, crystal glasses clinking with champagne, men in tailored suits whispering into each other's ears. Women paraded before them like jewels to be bought, each step echoing against marble floors, each forced smile hiding terror. Amara stood behind the curtain, her hands trembling though she tried to still them. She had learned long ago to wear armor in the form of pride, but tonight, her pride was stripped thread by thread. She was a mother. A survivor. And yet, here she was, reduced to a number, an item. For Malik, her 7-year-old son, she told herself she would endure anything. If this humiliation bought him one more day of safety, she would stand. She would not break. Her skin glowed rich and dark under the stage lights as they pushed her forward. Gasps rippled through the room. Not because she was weak or frail, but because she stood with her head high, unlike the others who had already given up. Amara's eyes, fierce and defiant, scanned the crowd. She would not cower. If these men wanted a spectacle, she would give them one, of a woman who refused to surrender her dignity. The auctioneer's voice rang out, oily and triumphant. Lot number 24. Exotic beauty. Strong build. Perfect obedience if properly trained. The words made bile rise in her throat, but Amara locked her jaw. She was no man's pet, no man's trophy. She was a mother. A protector. Bids began to fly. Voices sharp, impatient. 50,000. 70. 100. Laughter and rivalry laced the air like poison. Amara's heart pounded harder with every shout. Her knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself still. She thought of Malik's smile, of his tiny hand clutching hers, of his whispered promise. "Mama, you're the bravest person I know." Then silence. A new voice cut through the hall. Deep, smooth, commanding. 1,000,000. Gasps erupted. The crowd turned toward the source. He sat in the front row, unmoved by the chaos his bid had caused. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit of midnight black, Khalid al-Rashid was a man who radiated wealth and power as easily as others breathed. His dark eyes were unreadable, his expression carved from stone. Unlike the others, he did not leer, did not smirk. He simply raised a gloved hand, and with that, the bidding ended. The auctioneer, stunned but delighted, slammed the gavel. Sold. To Sheikh Khalid al-Rashid. Applause and murmurs swept the room. Men muttered under their breath, some envious, some mocking. Why waste $1 million on her? What does he see that we don't? But no one dared challenge him. Khalid's reputation preceded him, the ruthless billionaire whose empire stretched across continents, who crushed rivals with a single signature. Amara's stomach twisted. Relief that the shouting had ended mixed with a sharper fear. Why her? What did a man like him want with a woman like her? She lifted her chin higher, refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing her tremble. Their eyes met for the first time. Her glare was fire, his gaze unreadable ice. For a moment, the room disappeared. She wasn't sure who was the predator and who was the prey. As guards moved to escort her from the stage, her thoughts thundered louder than the applause. Why me? Why him? And what will happen now? The answer, she feared, would change her life forever. The limousine glided away from the glittering hall like a phantom in the night. Amara sat in silence, her wrists free, though her spirit felt shackled by uncertainty. She had expected rough hands, vulgar whispers, the ugly triumph of ownership. Instead, she found herself seated across from Khalid al-Rashid, who stared out the tinted glass as if she weren't even there. For a moment, she almost wished he would speak, anything to end the heavy quiet, but when his voice finally came, it was not what she anticipated. Your name. His tone was flat, efficient. Amara's lips parted. Amara. He nodded once, tapping something into a sleek tablet balanced on his knee. No mocking, no assessing glance at her body. Only facts, recorded like data. The silence stretched again, punctuated only by the hum of the engine. When they arrived at the villa, marble gates swung open as if bowing to him. The house that greeted her was nothing short of palatial. Gleaming white stone, fountains whispering in the courtyard, lanterns casting soft pools of gold. Yet as she stepped inside, the luxury felt colder than chains. She braced herself. Would he order her to kneel? To serve? To play some degrading role he had purchased with his obscene bid? Instead, he turned to his assistant, a man in an immaculate gray suit. Contracts. Confidentiality agreements. Medical checks. Handle everything discreetly. The assistant bowed and hurried away. Amara blinked. Contracts. Paperwork. This felt less like ownership and more like employment, except she hadn't applied for a job. She had been bought. She could not reconcile the contradiction. Finally, she snapped, her pride igniting against the haze of confusion. What are you doing? If you paid for me, then say it. Claim what you think you own. Khalid's eyes cut to hers, sharp and steady. I do not claim what I do not want. The words struck her like a slap, though they carried no insult. His voice was calm, unshaken, as though he were stating a fact. Amara clenched her fists. Was this some game? A test to see if she would break? He stepped closer, his height casting her in shadow, yet he never reached for her. You will have your own quarters. Clothes will be provided. Meals as well. No one will touch you without my permission, not even myself. Is that clear? Her breath caught. Permission. That sounded less like protection and more like prison. She couldn't decide if he was saving her or caging her. Khalid turned away, already dismissing the conversation. Rest tonight. Tomorrow, we will discuss terms. Terms. Paperwork. Rules. It all reeked of something deeper, something hidden beneath his cold exterior. If this was about power, why did it feel like a negotiation instead of domination? As Amara was led down the hallway to her private room, her mind spun. She had been bought, yet untouched. Owned, yet respected? She couldn't shake the question that gnawed at her soul. What game is this man playing, and why am I the piece he chose? Morning light spilled through the tall arched windows of the villa, painting the marble floors in soft gold. Amara stood near the window, her arms folded tight across her chest. She had spent a sleepless night pacing the length of the room, weighing every possibility of escape, of resistance. Though the silk sheets and velvet drapes spoke of wealth, she felt the invisible weight of control pressing in. The door opened. Khalid entered, composed as ever, his black suit impeccable, his presence commanding. He regarded her as though she were another part of his empire, something to be managed, but not indulged. You will remain here until further notice, he said, his voice steady, unbothered. Your needs will be met. Food, clothing, security. In return, I expect compliance. Do not attempt to leave. Amara's chin lifted, defiance sparking in her eyes. So that's it? You've bought yourself a prisoner, and expect me to be grateful for a gilded cage. Khalid's gaze didn't waver. I expect you to use common sense. Out there, men would have torn you apart. Here, you are safe. You mistake security for chains. She let out a sharp laugh, edged with bitterness. Safety at the cost of freedom is still captivity. I will not play servant in your palace, Sheik. His brow arched, the faintest trace of amusement tugging at his features. Servant. If I wanted obedience, I could have bought 10 women eager to bow. But I chose you. Then you chose wrong, she shot back, fire in her voice. Because I will never bow. Silence stretched between them, taut as a drawn bowstring. Khalid studied her, not with lust, but with a strange curiosity, as though her anger was more intriguing than her beauty. Most in his world flinched, obeyed, yielded. But this woman, this so-called purchase, stood before him unbroken. Finally, he stepped closer, lowering his voice until it carried a quiet authority that sent a chill down her spine. You think pride will protect you. Pride is a shield, yes, But it can also be a blade you turn against yourself. Learn the difference, Amara. Her name on his lips startled her. Few had spoken it since the auction. She held her ground, meeting his dark gaze without blinking. And you think power makes you untouchable. Maybe it does. But I am not one of your business deals, and I will not be signed away like a contract. For the first time, Khalid's expression shifted, something flickered in his eyes, admiration masked beneath control. He did not smile, but he inclined his head slightly, as though acknowledging a worthy adversary. You are not broken, he murmured, almost to himself. That much is clear. He turned and walked away, leaving her breathless with both fury and unease. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't touched her, yet somehow he had unsettled her more than the cruelest man at the auction. And in his calm retreat, she recognized a dangerous truth. He respected her fire, even as he sought to contain it. Amara woke the next day expecting commands, maybe even humiliation. Instead, a quiet knock came at her door, and when she opened it, 2 maids stood waiting. They carried armfuls of clothes, silks, cottons, even simple linen dresses folded neatly. On the tray they left on her table were fresh fruits, warm bread, cheeses, and a steaming cup of tea. She stared at it all with suspicion. No chains. No collars. No harsh orders. Only comfort. Too much comfort. Her fingers brushed the fabric, soft against her skin, and she clenched her jaw. What game is he playing? A man who bought her for $1 million could not possibly mean kindness. When she finally emerged into the hallway, Khalid was already there, speaking in low Arabic to one of his staff. His eyes flicked toward her briefly, not with hunger, but with acknowledgement, as though she were an honored guest rather than a possession. That unsettled her even more. Later, at dinner, she sat at a long polished table, the kind one would expect in a palace. Platters of food stretched across it, more than she could ever finish. She ate carefully, always conscious of her habits. Without thinking, she slipped a piece of bread into her napkin, tucking it discreetly under the tablecloth. When she looked up, Khalid was watching her. Not harshly, not accusingly, just watching. His gaze lingered, sharp yet thoughtful. You hide food, he said at last, his voice low, almost musing. Amara froze, her pulse leaping. Old habits, she muttered, defensive. But he didn't press. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. For yourself. Her silence was answer enough. No, he murmured, almost to himself. Not for you. For someone else. Her breath hitched. She had revealed too much. The bread, the secrecy, he had seen through her. Khalid's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something like curiosity, even intrigue. You have a child. It wasn't a question. It was an observation, a revelation. Amara's throat tightened. For the first time since the auction, she felt real fear, not for herself, but for Malik. She had spent every moment since that night shielding him from men like these. And now, one of the most powerful men she had ever met had discovered the secret she guarded most fiercely. The villa was quiet that night, the kind of silence that made Amara's skin itch. The guards moved in steady patterns outside, their boots crunching on gravel. She had memorized their routes during sleepless nights, each pass, each pause. Tonight, she could not afford hesitation. Her son needed her. With her heart hammering in her chest, she slipped through a service door and into the garden, her body cloaked in shadows. Every step away from the villa was a gamble, but Malik was close. She had made certain of that when she was forced to come here. A sympathetic maid had whispered of a small guest house beyond the property where her son had been placed, temporarily. Amara had lived with fear for so long, but tonight the fear was sharper, heavier. Malik would be waiting, frightened, wondering if his mother had abandoned him. When she reached the guest house, her breath caught. A dim lamp glowed inside, and in the window she saw him, small, thin, curled on the edge of the bed with his toy car clutched in his hand. Her Malik. She slipped inside, the door creaking softly. His head snapped up, eyes wide, and then he was running, flying into her arms with a sob. Mama. His voice cracked with relief as he buried his face in her neck. I thought you were gone. I thought they took you forever. Tears blurred her vision as she clutched him close. Never, my love. I will never leave you. Not for anything. He trembled in her arms, small fingers gripping her dress as though she might vanish. Amara rocked him gently, whispering reassurances she barely believed herself. Every stolen second felt like borrowed time. But then she felt it, that unmistakable weight of being watched. She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. Khalid stood in the doorway, tall and immovable, the shadows of the night clinging to him like armor. His eyes fixed on her, then on the boy in her arms. No words were spoken, but the silence was thunderous. For the first time, Khalid's mask of control slipped. His gaze lingered on Malik's tear-streaked face, on the desperate strength with which Amara held him. Something raw flickered in his eyes. Pain, memory, recognition. You risked everything, Khalid said at last, his voice low, almost reverent. For him. Amara tightened her hold on Malik, her chin lifting in defiance even through her tears. He's my son. I would give my life 1,000 times before I'd let anyone take him. The words struck something deep in Khalid, pulling him backward into a place he rarely allowed himself to visit. A boy, younger than Malik, hiding under a heavy wooden table while voices shouted in the next room. His father's rage was a storm, glass shattering, his mother's cries muffled against slaps of violence. Khalid remembered clenching his fists, wishing he were bigger, stronger, able to protect her. But he was not. He was just a child, powerless, watching the one person who had loved him most suffer to shield him. His mother had sacrificed everything, enduring humiliation and pain, just so her son might grow beyond that cruelty. And now here he stood, decades later, staring at another mother with the same fierce devotion blazing in her eyes. Amara was no purchase, no possession. She was a lioness guarding her cub with teeth bared, even in captivity. Khalid's throat tightened, though his voice remained steady. He is safe here. I will see to it myself. Amara searched his face, expecting deceit, but for the first time she glimpsed something almost human beneath his polished exterior. Vulnerability. Memory. A scar hidden behind wealth and control. Malik clung to her still, whispering, "Don't let them take me, Mama." She pressed a kiss to his forehead. "No one will, my heart." But as her eyes met Khalid's, she realized the truth. This man had seen her most guarded secret, and in that moment, the balance between them shifted forever. The next morning, Amara expected punishment for sneaking out. She expected locked doors, harsher guards, maybe even to be dragged before Khalid like a guilty child. Instead, when she was summoned to his study, she found him seated at a wide mahogany desk, papers spread before him in neat stacks. He did not look up right away. His pen scratched across the page in swift, decisive strokes, as though the entire world bent to the rhythm of his hand. Only when she spoke did he lift his gaze. "If you brought me here to lecture me," she said tightly, "save your breath. I did what I had to do." His eyes, dark and steady, pinned her where she stood. "You risked everything for your son. I expected nothing less." The calm in his voice startled her more than anger would have. Then he pushed a folder toward her across the desk. "Read." Amara hesitated, then pulled the papers closer. Her brow furrowed. It wasn't a contract of ownership, not the cruel documentation she had feared. Instead, it was protection. Provisions for housing, food, medical care. An education fund in Malik's name. Security detail assigned to both mother and child. 6 months, clearly written. Her lips parted. "What is this?" "My offer," Khalid said simply. "You will stay here under my protection for 6 months. In that time, your son will be provided for, his schooling, his health, his safety. At the end of the term, you are free to walk away with him. No obligations." Her heart pounded. "And in exchange, what do you want from me?" His jaw tightened. "Nothing you fear. I do not use women like merchandise. What I did at that auction was not a purchase, it was prevention. If I had not bid, someone else would have. Someone who would have broken you. And I will not tolerate such exploitation. Amara's chest rose and fell with sharp breaths. His words should have relieved her, yet they stirred anger instead. So I'm supposed to thank you? For saving me with one hand and trapping me with the other. His gaze didn't waver. You mistake an offer for a chain. You can leave if you wish, but tell me, Amara, where would you take your son? Back into the shadows where men hunt the desperate? Or into a world that waits to swallow him whole because of poverty? The words struck deep, because she had no answer. She hated him for knowing her weakness so well. Her fingers curled over the papers. The future she dreamed of for Malik was right there, written in ink. A real school. Protection. Safety. All the things she could never afford on her own. Her pride screamed to push it away. But a mother's heart whispered otherwise. I don't want your charity, she said, her voice breaking between steel and surrender. And I don't give charity, Khalid replied, his tone like a verdict. I make investments. Consider this one in your son. The room fell silent, but the decision hung between them, heavy and inescapable. Life in Khalid's world was nothing like Amara had ever known. The villa was sprawling, filled with marble hallways, carved arches, and gardens blooming with exotic flowers she couldn't even name. There were staff at her beck and call, 3-course meals at every sitting, clothes tailored to her size waiting neatly pressed each morning. To an outsider, it might have looked like paradise. To Amara, it was a gilded cage. Luxury without freedom was still captivity. Days bled into one another. She woke, cared for Malik, attended lessons with him, walked the gardens when permitted. And yet, she found her gaze often drawn to Khalid. He was always working, on the phone, in meetings, signing documents that seemed to change the world with a stroke of his pen. But sometimes, she caught him watching her too. Not with hunger, but with quiet curiosity, as if her presence disrupted the rhythm of his carefully ordered life. Their conversations became battles of wit. One evening at dinner, she set down her fork with deliberate force. You know, you walk around here like a king expecting everyone to bow. Khalid raised a brow, unshaken. And you refuse to bow simply because you believe it will wound me. Maybe it does, she countered, a small smile tugging her lips. Maybe it bothers you that I'm not impressed. His eyes lingered on her, dark and steady. On the contrary, I find it refreshing. The admission unsettled her. Most men recoiled at her sharp tongue, but Khalid met it with calm intrigue. He didn't crush her voice, he let it ring out, even when it challenged him. Still, the walls around her heart held firm. She reminded herself that safety bought by another man's wealth was fragile, temporary. Yet, slowly, she began to see something beneath his arrogance. He listened when she spoke. When she suggested Malik should have more time to play rather than just study, Khalid adjusted his schedule without protest. When she criticized the unnecessary waste of food served at dinner, he ordered the kitchen to donate the excess to a local shelter. It was unnerving, this strange balance. He was powerful, untouchable, and yet, he let her words shift his actions. Late one evening, Amara found herself in the library, tracing the spines of books older than her grandmother's memories. Khalid entered quietly, pausing to watch her. You read? He asked. Of course I read, she replied, turning to face him. What did you expect? That poverty makes us illiterate. For a heartbeat, silence filled the air, heavy but not hostile. Then, something rare, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. I expected you would surprise me. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Amara felt her defenses tremble. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was respect, cautious and fragile, slowly weaving threads of something deeper. And though she told herself she could never trust a man like him, a dangerous truth grew in the quiet of her heart. Part of her already did. It began with a photograph. A grainy image captured by some opportunistic guest at the villa gates, Amara stepping out with Malik at her side, Khalid a few steps behind them. Within hours, the picture spread like wildfire across gossip sites and glossy tabloids. Arab billionaire keeps secret mistress? Who is the black woman in Sheikh al-Rashid's life? Unlikely pair. From auction to affection? The headlines dripped with speculation and venom. The comments were worse. Whispers in elite circles turned into laughter behind jeweled hands. A black single mother in the company of one of the richest men in the world? To them, she was a scandal, a blemish, a curiosity to mock. Amara read the stories in silence, her stomach twisting. Every word was a knife, reminders that she didn't belong, that people like her were only ever tolerated as servants or shadows, never equals. Malik noticed her mood and asked, "Mama, why are they saying bad things?" She smiled for him, but inside, she was breaking. That evening, at a formal dinner with Khalid's business associates, the whispers didn't stop. A man leaned too close, muttering, "She won't last long. A fling at best." Another, with a cruel smile, said, "I didn't think you had such unconventional tastes, Khalid." Laughter rippled across the table. Amara felt her cheeks burn. She rose, ready to leave before her dignity shattered completely, but Khalid's voice cut through the room, cold and sharp as steel. "You mistake me for a man who cares for your approval," he said, his gaze sweeping the table like a blade. "Amara is under my protection. Insult her again, and you insult me." The laughter died instantly. Silence fell, heavy and stunned. Khalid returned to his meal as though nothing had happened, but his words lingered, echoing louder than the clink of silverware. For the first time, Amara saw not the ruthless businessman or the unreadable buyer from the auction, but a man willing to stake his reputation on her dignity. Later, when the room emptied, she whispered, "You didn't have to do that." Khalid's eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. "Yes, Amara. I did." And in that moment, she realized something had shifted. He wasn't just shielding her. He was standing with her. The storm rolled in after dusk, sweeping across the desert with a fury that rattled the windows and shook the palm trees outside the villa. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the library where Amara sat curled in a chair, staring at the crackling fire. She had been restless all evening, her thoughts a whirlwind she could no longer tame. She heard him before she saw him. Khalid entered quietly, his presence filling the room like thunder without sound. He poured himself a drink, his movements unhurried, then turned to find her watching him. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. Amara's jaw tightened. "Sleep doesn't come easy when you're someone's possession." His eyes darkened, but he said nothing. Instead, he took the chair opposite hers, the storm outside echoing the tension between them. She leaned forward, her voice sharp. "Why did you buy me, Khalid? Why me? You could have walked away. You could have let another man take me. Why spend $1 million to claim something you didn't even want?" For the first time, his composure cracked. He looked away, the firelight catching the hard line of his jaw. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher, as if dredged from a place he rarely visited. "My father was a monster." The words startled her into silence. "He ruled our house with fear. My mother." His throat worked, and he took a steadying breath. She was strong. Too strong for him. And he broke her for it. Day after day, I watched her endure what no woman should, all to shield me. I was a child, helpless, ashamed. I swore, when I had power, no one under my watch would suffer what she did. Amara's anger faltered, replaced by something heavier, understanding. Khalid's gaze met hers, fierce yet haunted. "I attend those auctions not for pleasure, Amara. I buy women, and then I set them free. Quietly, discreetly. Some return home. Others find work in safe places. But they vanish from the hands of predators. I paid for you because I would not see you destroyed." The storm outside roared, but in the library, a deeper silence settled. Amara's heart twisted. She had built her defenses so high, convinced every man at that auction was the same. Yet here he was, revealing a truth that reframed everything. He wasn't her captor. He was her shield. She whispered, "You could have told me." His eyes softened, just slightly. "Would you have believed me?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She thought of Malik, safe in his bed, untouched by the horrors she had feared. She thought of the night she saw Khalid watching them, not with desire, but with something far more dangerous, recognition. For the first time since the auction, Amara let her shoulders ease. Not surrender. Not trust. But a crack in the wall she had built around her heart. And Khalid, watching her, knew he had won something far greater than obedience. He had earned a sliver of her faith. It began with a football. Malik had been playing alone in the garden, kicking the ball against the stone wall, chasing it with bursts of laughter. Khalid had been watching from the terrace, a glass of tea in hand, his expression unreadable. Then, almost awkwardly, he set the glass aside, removed his tailored jacket, and stepped onto the grass. "Pass it to me," Khalid called. Malik's eyes widened. For a moment, the boy hesitated, then, with a grin, he kicked the ball hard in Khalid's direction. The billionaire stopped it cleanly with his foot, surprising them both. A playful match unfolded, Malik darting about with youthful energy, Khalid keeping pace with surprising skill. Their laughter carried across the garden, rising above the rustle of palm trees. From the balcony, Amara watched, her chest tightening. She had never seen Malik so free, so unafraid. And she had never seen Khalid smile like that, unguarded, almost boyish, as if some long-locked part of him had been released. Later that evening, Malik demanded a bedtime story. Amara started to protest. Khalid was too busy, too important, but the boy tugged at his hand with wide, pleading eyes. To her shock, Khalid agreed. He sat at the edge of the bed, voice low and steady as he spun a tale of brave sailors and hidden treasure. Malik leaned against him, lulled by the sound, and drifted to sleep before the story's end. Khalid stayed a moment longer, brushing a strand of hair from the boy's forehead with a tenderness that made Amara's throat tighten. When they stepped out into the hallway, she whispered, almost accusingly, "You didn't have to do that." Khalid looked at her, his expression softer than she'd ever seen. "I never had anyone to tell me stories. No one to chase a ball with. Malik deserves what I did not." Amara's defenses wavered. She wanted to thank him, to let gratitude replace suspicion. But the sight of them together unsettled her. It blurred the lines she fought to keep sharp, between protector and intruder, between gratitude and something dangerously close to affection. And in the quiet of her heart, Amara asked herself the question she feared most. What if Khalid was not the man she thought he was? What if he was something more? The illusion of safety shattered with a single phone call. Khalid was in his study when the message reached him, an encrypted warning from a trusted contact. The auction ring had discovered his interference. They knew he had purchased Amara not for his own use, but to pull her out of their grip. And they were not pleased. That night, the villa's security doubled. Guards patrolled the grounds, cameras scanned every corner, and Malik was kept indoors. But despite the fortress around them, Amara felt fear creeping in like smoke through cracks. She knew men like the ones who had run the auction. They thrived on power, and they would not forgive humiliation. The threats came quickly. A note slipped under the villa gate. "She will pay. The boy will pay." Amara's hands shook as she read it, fury and terror warring inside her. She stormed into Khalid's office, where he stood by the window, phone in hand. "How long were you going to keep this from me?" she demanded, slamming the note onto his desk. His gaze hardened. "Until I had neutralized the threat. Fear gains them power. Why would I hand it to them?" Her voice cracked with rage. "Because it's my life, Khalid. My son's life. You don't get to make these choices without me." For the first time, their fight was not pride against pride but fear against fear. Khalid stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I will not let them touch you. Either of you. I swear it. Amara shook her head, tears burning her eyes. I won't hide behind your wealth and guards like some fragile thing. If they come for us, I will fight. Malik deserves a mother who stands, not one who cowers. Khalid's jaw clenched, torn between admiration and fury at her defiance. You think I see you as weak? His voice was sharp, almost desperate. I see you as the strongest woman I've ever met. But strength does not mean walking into bullets. The storm between them lingered, fierce and unresolved. Yet beneath the clash was a single truth: the danger had drawn them closer. Their lives were now bound not just by circumstance, but by the fire of survival. And Khalid knew, protecting Amara and Malik was no longer an act of honor. It was the most personal battle of his life. The night the threats became reality, Amara made her choice. She had overheard the guards whispering, a breach at the gates, men slipping through the shadows. Panic rose in her chest, but Malik's sleeping face steadied her. He could not pay the price for her past, for Khalid's defiance. Slipping into the hallway, she crept toward the servants' entrance. If they wanted her, she would give herself up before they could touch her son. Her heart thundered, every step a war between terror and love. She whispered to herself, better me than him. Always me. But she didn't make it to the door. Khalid, she gasped, stumbling back as his tall frame blocked her path. He was dressed in black, eyes fierce with a fire that seemed to burn brighter than the storm raging outside. You think I would let you walk to your death? He demanded, his voice shaking with something more dangerous than anger, fear. They want me, she cried. Not Malik. If I go, he's safe. Khalid stepped closer, seizing her wrist, not roughly, but firmly, as if anchoring her to the earth. You are not theirs to claim. Not anymore. Tears blurred her vision. Why? Why risk your life, your empire, everything, for me? I was nothing more than... His voice cut her short, raw and unguarded. I didn't buy you, Amara. I found you. Do you understand? I found the woman who refuses to break, even when the world tries to shatter her. I found the mother who would walk into fire for her child. I found the one person who sees me not as my fortune, but as a man. Her breath caught, her defenses crumbling. The storm outside cracked like the echo of his words in her chest. You don't know what you're saying, she whispered, though her heart begged her to believe him. Khalid's hand lifted, hesitant, brushing a tear from her cheek. I know exactly what I'm saying. My wealth, my name, my power. None of it matters if I cannot protect you and Malik. If I cannot stand beside you. For the first time, she did not pull away. She let the warmth of his hand linger, let the weight of his confession sink into her bones. Between them, the air shifted, no longer captor and captive, no longer protector and protected, but two souls standing bare in the storm. His lips hovered near hers, not demanding, not taking, but waiting, asking. And when Amara finally leaned forward, it wasn't surrender. It was choice. The kiss was not desperate but reverent, a promise forged in fire and danger. A union not of power, but of dignity. The dignity of a woman who refused to bow and a man who finally found something greater than wealth. When they parted, Khalid whispered the vow that bound them tighter than chains. You are free, Amara. Always. But if you'll let me, I will spend the rest of my life proving you are not alone. And for the first time since the auction, she believed him. The storm had passed, both outside and within their lives. Within weeks, Khalid's vast network moved like a blade through silk. The men who had run the auction ring were exposed, their wealth seized, their influence dismantled. Governments that once turned a blind eye suddenly found evidence stacked on their desks. One by one, the predators fell, stripped of power. Through it all, Amara watched, stunned by the ease with which Khalid wielded his empire, not for himself, but for justice. Yet he never boasted, never sought her gratitude. When the final report came, her name erased from every ledger, her freedom recognized by law, he placed the papers in her hands and simply said, "It's yours now. Your life, your choice." Amara stared at the document, her heart pounding. For so long she had carried the weight of being owned. By poverty, by fear, by circumstance. Now, for the first time, she was free in every sense. Not because a man gave her liberty, but because a man had refused to keep her caged. Malik thrived in the new dawn. Dressed in a crisp uniform, he stood proudly at the gates of a prestigious school, his backpack nearly as big as him. He turned to wave at her and colored, his grin wide, his eyes shining with the promise of a future she had once believed impossible. Amara's throat tightened as she whispered, "He belongs here. He finally belongs." Khalid's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, not claiming, only steadying. "So do you." She turned to him then, truly seeing him. Not the billionaire who had bought her, not the rescuer who had shielded her, but the man who had walked beside her through fire. The man who never once tried to own her, but instead helped her reclaim the one thing no one could put a price on, her dignity. "I thought you were my captor," she admitted softly. "But you were my mirror. You showed me who I really was." Khalid's gaze softened, a rare vulnerability breaking through. "Not who you were, Amara. Who you've always been." In that moment, she realized their story was not about power or possession. It was about beginning again, not as billionaire and single mother, but as two souls, equal and unbound, walking into a future neither of them had dared to dream. The villa was quiet that evening, bathed in the soft glow of lanterns. Amara stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, the night air warm against her skin. She had the papers of her freedom, the means to walk away, and every reason to start fresh on her own. Yet her feet had not moved. Her heart, for once, was not torn, it was steady. Khalid stepped beside her, silent at first, as if afraid to disturb her thoughts. Then, with a rare humility in his voice, he asked, "When will you leave?" She turned to him, eyes bright but unwavering. "I'm not leaving." His breath caught, a man unaccustomed to being surprised. "Not because of Malik? Not because you feel you owe me?" Amara shook her head, a small smile curving her lips. "No. I stay because I choose to. Because I love you, Khalid. Not the wealth, not the power, you." For a moment, he simply looked at her, as though trying to etch her words into his very soul. Then he whispered, reverent, "And I love you, Amara. As my equal, as my partner. Never as my possession." Just then, Malik's small voice drifted from the doorway. "Mama! Dad!" Both turned, startled. The boy rubbed his eyes, shy but determined. "Good night, Dad," he said softly, before padding back to his room. Khalid's chest tightened, his composure breaking as Amara slipped her hand into his. No fortune, no empire, no past could equal the weight of that single word. Together, they stood in the quiet night, no longer captor and captive, but family. What began as a purchase became a destiny neither of them expected.